Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us.
In order for nature to take care of us as human beings, also all the plants and the biome and everything that are around us, we need to take care of the water and the oxygen. And there's a gentleman that's with us. This is Dr. Luke Javernick. He is the executive director. Also, he's an award-winning river scientist of river science. And we're going to be talking about the state of river restoration. And so, Luke, looking at the term restoration, why do we need to have restoration of our rivers, our creeks, our streams, every body of water on planet Earth? Why is this restoration so important?
Yeah, that's a good question. If we think about our own local community, we probably have a creek or a river or some kind of body of water nearby. And we often don't think of that water being polluted, but statistics in the US kind of show that about 40% of the rivers that are surveyed are degraded in some kind of way. And a lot of these 40% are too polluted to fish in or recreationally swim in. And I think that kind of highlights some of the big problems that we focus on in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And looking at what we have in front of us, Luke, tell us what we're really looking at as a true scientist that we humans may be missing. We see a little green area, this tiny stream running down and out of these foothills. And everything else around it is barren. What's right? What's wrong about what we're looking at?
Yeah, so this photo gets credit from Mark Beardsley, and this is a river here in Colorado, or a creek that's had historically a lot of unmanaged grazing, water extraction. And over time, the land is very bare. Down by the river, there's really no trees or substantial vegetation. And this river is starting to become degraded on kind of the biological aspect, the chemical aspect, and as well the physical aspects. And that's what we're looking at restoring when it comes to rivers. There's a lot of ways that people talk about restoration, but it's really the physical, chemical, and biological aspects that we're trying to get back to where they should be.
Yeah, this looks like one of my first 4-H projects when I was 8, 9 years old. We had some of this on a property my father bought, and he started restoring all these areas. So looking at the erosion here in this situation, how is this actually degrading the water, but also the soil and the air? And what do we really need to do to improve this?
Yeah, so this is a good example of what we call incision, where the river keeps cutting down deeper and deeper, and that causes a few problems. Erosion, as you mentioned, it's pulling in too much sediment into the river, this creek, and then eventually the river downstream. Mm-hmm. And that's tough for the biological aspect of it. Sediment, too much sediment, like too much of anything, can become a pollution. But also, as this channel incisors deeper and deeper, it's kind of cutting deeper and deeper into that water table, and it's allowing the stored water to escape quicker. And so it's, as the riverbed's lowering, so too is the water table, which is another big problem that we face with a lot of our smaller creeks in the United States.
Yeah, and it looks like some of those mining areas that you have all across Colorado. Understand there's literally just tens of thousands of these incisions, in the mountains and throughout the state. So how does that degrade the creeks, streams, or rivers in Colorado? And this is what you're really addressing through your citizen scientists to test and learn more about this.
Yeah. So this one really is kind of looking at the water quality, kind of the chemistry here, but they're all tied together, right? This is actually, it looks like it's caused by mine, and certainly a lot of mine areas can have water discharges like this. This one, interestingly though, is actually from a post-fire, so where the watershed above caught on fire, burned really intensely, and now a lot of the sediment is being easily transported downstream in such great quantities that it's having that chemical component, physical and biological impacts as well.
Yeah, and this is what we're seeing across the West, where many of these areas, like in California, we see the incessant fires, but we don't really realize the aftermath of that. The topsoil, even the lower strata of the soil, is being washed away and leaving virtually no nutrients whatsoever to carry on life. But looking at the restoration point, I thought this was very well done in the photography that you shared with us. So we have 2008, 2016. Why are these two dates so important, and this gap in these dates?
Yeah, this is just, as we're talking about restoration, I thought it'd be great to, in the early part of this show, is just to kind of show what we're talking about and what we can do with restoration. So this, again, photo credit to Mark Beardsley. On the left there in 2008, this is the creek, very barren. Maybe the channel's a little bit, it's got too much sediment transport. The banks aren't really establishing good environments. And then in 2016, this is what it looks like after some significant restoration and helping the river have the processes that it needs to help restore itself with a little bit of encouragement and management.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it is allow nature to be able to care for itself. But when you have this kind of harsh and dramatic impact on the environment, it's very difficult for it to rejuvenate, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're fighting, is a lot of human impacts. Throughout the different generations, we've had different ideas of what river improvement really is. This is a picture from the 1900s in the Pacific Northwest, where logging was paying about 55% of people's paychecks. And they'd go out and harvest the logs, and a lot of river improvement in this time was to actually go through the rivers and pull out anything where logs would be snagged on, because they want the river to carry it down to the milling. And 1900s, this was our idea of river improvement, was to make rivers flow better so that we could get logs down.
Mm-hmm. Make them flow better so we can pull them back up, right?
Yeah. This picture is waiting for a flood to wash them down.
Oh my gosh! Now, then it goes to early days of electricity and damming so many rivers. How does this help to degrade? And is there any way that such structures actually improve the flow of the rivers, or is this purely a destructive process?
It's a slippery slope on both sides, but in the 1930s, we wanted to quickly expand in America. We had all the right recipes, and the industrial age was happening, and we wanted power, and we wanted more water resources and fire protection, and that's why in the 30s just dams were built everywhere. Today we have somewhere around 84,000 dams in the U.S. And yes, they provide a lot of wonderful things for our society, but there is a cost. They trap sediment. they change the water temperature. So downstream, you have impacts to the biology. And they only have a certain amount of lifetimes as well, right? They'll eventually trap and store a lot of sediment and they lose capacity. So there's a maintenance issue as well. But for better and for worse, we have a lot of dams. And it just kind of highlights some of our thinking and how it's changed over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then looking at these various channels, this is something about the Army Corps of Engineers, any kind of water bodies. They're trying to make them straight runs, and you see the concrete. What have we done to the quality of the water coming through this, what probably was a natural and wild stream at one time?
Yeah, at one time it was. And then in the 1950s, you have the Army Corps of Engineers and a lot of flood districts as well. And, hindsight's 2020, right? Like we can clearly see why this is wrong today. But back then, we can't really blame them necessarily. Their goal was to get water through these cities and this infrastructure as quickly as it could so that during flood events, which they were experiencing a lot of, weren't as devastating to their infrastructure. But to the quality that you ask, you've removed any transfer of water down to the water table here. You don't have any sediment. And that microbiology and the vegetation that typically lines rivers helps water to stay clean. There's a sustainable chemistry that happens there where the bugs and the fish and the plants process the nutrients of the water and chemicals, and you've lost all of that, and you've lost all the habitat here.
Mm-hmm. Now, going to restoration, this looks like a very destructive process in itself. But is there something we don't know about, we're not seeing to our eye, of how we may be actually improving the flow of water and restoring back to what was there originally?
Yeah, so this picture is kind of trying to tell the story of what happened in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, early 2000s, where we said we can do better. Let's get out and put rivers back the way they're supposed to be. And so we did so with a lot of construction. We treated this like a lot of other engineering projects where it was design, build, construct, and leave. And that's really not a very good approach to how we restore rivers. But this is just to highlight that this wasn't a sustainable approach either to restoring rivers, because it's really expensive. You're only going to impact a small area. And in the end, us telling a river how to be a river wasn't the best way forward.
Yeah, it's kind of a fool's paradise where humans trying to dictate the nature. Nature had this figured out a long time ago, so we're the neophytes as far as the world is concerned. Looking at this manual, and we're going to go out on this because we're just about out of time, Luke. Tell us what's in here that we need to know about, and how can citizens learn about really taking care of whatever the water body is around their own home.
Yeah, so a new approach to river restoration is really helping the river to restore itself through encouraging some of those natural processes, helping it kick off. And this is just kind of where we are today with restoration. And I present this design manual because it's really gaining a lot of traction for a lot of reasons. This work to restore rivers is mostly done by handwork. We're encouraging rivers to kick off their processes again, to be messy, complex systems. And it's not overly technical. It's in the title, low tech. So a lot of people with some training can get out and make a difference in their local rivers. And this is kind of, it's scalable and it's affordable. And that's what we're going to need to overcome these river problems and the spatial scale of problems that we have in America and the world.
Luke Javernick, Executive Director, River Science, thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Thanks, Sam.